Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Made You Book. My name's Gretchen and today I'm going to be talking about the 11th book that I finished from the Booker Prize Longlist. Now I know that I am late with this video. We obviously have a short list announced at this point in time, but I was unfortunately not able to read all 13 books prior to that long list being announced. But I'm still going to finish the long list and I will continue to do the reviews on this book and then the two additional ones that I am currently reading in case you're interested. Now, one of them, specifically the book that I'm going to talk about today, was actually shortlisted. So if you're interested in reading the shortlist or you just decided to start with the Booker Prize once the shortlist was announced, this is going to be perfect for you because you can decide whether or not you want to pick up Prophet Song. But the other two, How to Build a Boat and All the Little Bird Hearts, although they did not make the shortlist, I am still going to do reviews on them because even though they didn't make the short list, they made the long list and some people might still want to read them. So I will definitely get those posted as soon as I get around to finishing those books. Life has just been crazy lately. There's just been so many things going on, and in case you can't tell by my voice, I'm also sick at the moment. So yeah, it's been a struggle. But anyway, we're gonna persevere and we're gonna get through this. Hopefully I can without my voice cracking or having to take a lot of breaks to cough or potentially even sneeze. So Prophet Song, this book I actually finished right before the shortlist was announced, and I enjoyed this book very much, and I included it on both of my shortlists. The one that I predicted would be the official long or short list, and then my personal one for the books that I enjoyed the most. And I am really excited that it did make it. Now, I really personally enjoyed this book. I have also heard a lot of chatter from folks that did not get along very well with this book. And it's funny because I watched a lot of reviews for this and to kind of find out why people didn't like it, and a lot of the reasons that they didn't are totally respectable. I can completely understand why some readers would not get along with this book. Sometimes there are issues with the way a book is formatted or the way it is structured that is a deal breaker for readers. And this is definitely a book that has that impact on readers. You are either going to be okay with it or you're going to absolutely hate it. I don't know if there's going to be too many people that actually like it, but there are some that will persevere and deal with it just because they're enjoying the story. And that's really what got me through this. And once I got into like maybe the first 15 or 20 pages, I was used to the format and I was able to power through. But like I said, that's definitely something that you need to consider very early on, whether or not you're going to finish, because it doesn't change. It stays the same throughout. And what I mean by that is if you look, there are basically paragraphs that go on for pages and pages and pages, and there are not breaks in those paragraphs. This is very much a stream of consciousness type novel, and I say stream of consciousness loosely because it's not all necessarily stream of consciousness in the way that she's thinking or the things that she's thinking. It's also stream of consciousness in dialogue as well. So you're having these conversations between two characters, and they're literally bleeding into each other, and there's no delineation between them. So I oftentimes found myself like going back and rereading a paragraph or a sentence just to determine, okay, was that Eilish that said that, or was that Mark that said that? Or, going back and forth between the characters. And at first, as I was reading this, I was a little annoyed by that, but then it totally started to make sense to me why Paul Lynch was using that as a way to format the book. It was just chaotic as a reader to have to kind of plow through that, but I think that that's the point. Like, he wanted to use that as a way to represent the chaos in our main character Eilish's life and her world, and how she almost like she didn't even have time to think. Like, everything was happening so fast and everything just kind of bled together, and the next thing you know, we seem to be days in the future, and it's like, how did we even get there? So first and foremost, that type of format, it could definitely be off-putting to some. So just be forewarned that that's something that you're going to get from this book. Now, aside from that, if you can get past that formatting, the story is fascinating. Personally, I found it to be very fascinating, and I found it to be a very fast-paced, quick, kind of heart-pounding read, where you as the reader, it's another one of those books that had like just that underlying sinister tone. Something bad is going to happen, but you don't know as a reader what it is. You can obviously speculate, but you just always have this uneasy feeling, and you're waiting for that shoe to drop because you know that something horrific is coming around the corner. And I think that this book is also fun for the reader, obviously not for the characters, because you go through those phases multiple times. Just when you think you get to the horrible thing, you're like, oh wow, like that was awful. Then you get to something else that completely trumps the awful thing that happened 30 pages ago, and you keep thinking like, oh my gosh, how can things continuously be getting this bad? And I loved that as a reader. So as far as the overall plot goes, this is following our main character, Eilish. She is a very intelligent woman. She's not only book smart, but she's street smart. She is a scientist as far as her occupation goes. And she's also a mom. She's a mom to 4 children. She has Mark, who I think is 17, and she has 2 middle children, Bailey, and I think her name is Molly. And then you have her infant son, Ben. So she has a lot on her plate. Not only that, she has a father that is elderly, and he is getting to the point where he is entering the stages of dementia or Alzheimer's, and she doesn't have anybody as far as family goes to help her. She has a sister, but her sister lives in Canada, so she's not really of any help to them in Ireland where this book takes place. So basically, I don't want to get too much into the details of the story because a lot of it could potentially be spoiler territory, but the basic premise is one night, it was kind of like a dark and stormy night, Eilish is troubled because there is a knock on their door, and it's two police officers from this new secret police that's been established in Ireland. And we don't really get any details on what year this is taking place. We just know as a reader, it's sometime in the future. So these two secret police officers show up on the door, and they basically want to interrogate or question her husband, Larry. Larry is a trade unionist, and obviously being a trade unionist, they are basically fighting against everything that the secret police is wanting to establish. So, you know, just based on his occupation alone, Larry is a target for the secret police. The next thing we know, and this is not a spoiler, it's in the cover flap, Larry goes missing. And we don't know what happened to Larry. We don't know where he is. We don't know who was involved. All we know that he is gone. And Eilish, after worrying and wondering where her husband is for a while, she finally starts to come to the realization that he's gone, and she has this family to take care of on her own. She is also without his money, and the government is basically crashing around them. Everything is going, everything is just crumbling. It's falling into tyranny, and she is getting increasingly worried because she has a son that is in school, Mark, who is getting close to being able to graduate, and she's worried that he's not going to be able to continue schooling. So she has to worry about her family in each different stage in their life. She has to worry about Mark and whether or not he's going to be able to continue school. She has two middle children. So Bailey, he's having behavioral issues that she has to deal with. Obviously, the loss of his father, he's not taking that very well, and he's acting out. So she has to deal with a problem child. She also has a daughter that is not taking care of herself. She's not eating and she's wasting away. And then she has this infant that she, is constantly eating up her time, and she's just trying to keep everything in life together. And it's so admirable what she is doing, the lengths that she's going to keep her family together. And not only that, I mentioned she has a father. So the father doesn't live with them. He is on the border of having dementia, and some could even argue full-blown dementia, and she's worried about him. So this story is basically just that descent into anarchy in the government and the way that she is trying to navigate that, keep her family alive, keep her family safe, and yeah, it's very intriguing. It's very interesting. It's terrifying, especially because I think that one of the things I found so engaging about this book is that you really don't get a concept of time. And that might have just been my interpretation, but when I was reading this, I would feel like, okay, today is today. And then it would be like the next paragraph, all of a sudden it felt like we fast forwarded a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Like I had no idea how much time truly had passed. Is this something that was eventually like slowly taking place? Or is this something that was literally happening back to back to back, where we went from normalcy, we went from having structure in our government to being full-blown chaos by the end of that month? And I think that that was kind of really a genius of Paul Lynch, because that feeling for me as a reader added to the overall chaos, and that feeling of almost madness throughout the book. Like I even lost sense of time. I lost sense of where I was, and it made me feel out of touch with the reality of what was going on as a reader. And I think that that was just another way for him to kind of put us in the mindset of Eilish. So I think that that was a really, that Paul Lynch just did such an amazing job doing that. The other thing with this book is I was on the edge of my seat, and it went very quickly. Now, we talked a little bit about the format and how it's very clunky, but once I got into the rhythm, I absolutely flew through this book, and I mean flew through it. I probably read, I would say I probably read a good 150 pages of this on a 1.5 hour flight. And that's including that's like gate to gate. I mean, I was flying through it, and that wasn't me reading it like solidly that whole flight. That was, getting interrupted and everything. It was so engaging. I seriously did not want to put it down. Normally when I'm on a flight, I read, but I can only read in small chunks at a time. But this, I could not put it down. I was so into reading it, actually. I put on my reading light, and I never put on my reading light because I don't want to be that passenger, putting my light on and disrupting everybody else. But I was like, screw it, man. I'm into this book. I have to finish it. So yeah, I loved how propulsive it was, and I just loved how, I loved this for me as the reader, not for the character. I loved how things just kept getting increasingly worse, and because of that, I was able to imagine or kind of theorize what could possibly go wrong next. And I will say that what Eilish and her family had to endure and what they had to go through was terrifying. And why I think it's terrifying is, even though we were in Eilish's mind, there were still so many things that were left unsaid. We as the reader had to make our own interpretations of what was happening. We were provided with information, but it was all vague, and we had no idea how things escalated so quickly. And I think that is super scary, because when you think about when there are current events or things that get quickly out of hand, you do kind of question, wow, how did we go from this to that quickly? And I think that anytime we're dealing with the government, anytime we're dealing with politics, there's definitely a threat for that to happen. We take our freedom for granted, and we all need to really understand, and I'm speaking for myself as an American. I know that not everyone is from America, but I know where everybody is from, they have some type of political structure in place. And for those of you that do live in a place where you are free, that freedom is not going to be guaranteed. And that is a very scary thought, to go from being able to say what you want to say, to be able to do what you want to do, to be able to cross a border, to be able to go into the grocery store. And not only that, but one of the things that Eilish also endures, like, she has all of this on her plate, all of these horrible things that are happening, beginning with the disappearance of her husband. But the fact that her husband was a trade unionist, that put a mark on her back too. And then she had people in her neighborhood, she had people that were friendly to her in the past that chose a political side and then basically ostracized her. I don't think this is a spoiler, but there was actually a very disturbing scene in this where she went to the grocery store and the butcher was blatantly ignoring her. And it was so sad to read. And just to know that, what you believe in and what your affiliation is, whether it's a choice that you've personally made or if it's grandfathered in based on, in her case, a spouse's occupation, she had to endure that. And it was very eye-opening and just a really, important reminder that our freedom is not guaranteed, and we need to be more thankful for it. We need to be more appreciative of it. And also, we just need to be kinder to each other, and kind of not let politics come between us, because this is definitely, whatever side you are on, we're always scared of what the other side, whatever your affiliation is, we're always scared of what the other side might do. So we're afraid of them and they're afraid of us. And it's just scary to think that something like this could easily happen due to fear or basically, at the end of the day, how we treat each other, and forgetting that we're all humans and it's okay that we have different thoughts and ideas and experiences. We're all people at the end of the day, and this was just a really stark reminder that everything is fleeting and we could potentially be on the brink of this ourselves at any moment. So I loved the fact that it stirred up all of those feelings. I definitely think that this is why it made the shortlist, because it is so relevant to today. And there are a lot of people that are feeling the kind of the crunch of something like this potentially happening. And I think that it's a really good read. I'm curious to see if there are any other folks out there that enjoyed this book. If you didn't, I'm curious to see what it was that you didn't get on with, if it was solely the formatting or if there were some other components of this that you maybe didn't enjoy. One thing that I haven't really heard, but I could definitely see being a complaint for any of you that have read A Little Life. I know that one of the biggest complaints of people that read that did not like it is that they almost refer to it as trauma porn. Like, there's so much horrible there's so many horrible things happening that it's just too much for the reader. It doesn't seem realistic, or it's just, let's see how much misery we can dump on one character and see what they can endure. And I can see how people might have similar feelings, that disliked A Little Life for that reason with this book, because honestly, it is just one setback after another for Eilish and her family. So yeah, are you glad it made the short list? Would you rather another book have made it? Curious to see what all of you guys think. I am still, like I said, doing 2 more Booker long list reviews for All the Little Bird Hearts and How to Build a Boat, even though those didn't make it. But until then, I'll leave you guys for now, and we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye.